Hey everyone, Videogamelover here, and welcome to another review. Today I'll be reviewing the Sega 32x. Now, as we all know about the Sega 32x, this add-on did not did well at all. It came out in 1994 in the United States, and it was released for around $150. It came out in Japan around winter '94, right when the Sega Saturn came out in Japan. So yeah, very bad timing. The 32x was powered by two Hitachi 32-bit processors with a clock speed of 23 megahertz. So apparently it was supposed to run much faster than the Genesis, and in some cases it did. There's also, you can add many colors to the Sega Genesis thanks to the 32x. So the one upside to the 32x is it does improve the picture quality of the Sega Genesis. So yes, it was $150. No shocker, it flopped. Because right when this thing came out, the Sega Saturn was already announced for the United States, and the Sega Saturn came out in May of '95. They jumped the date. So the 32x started to flop, and all stores started to reject it. They began to sell the system for like $20 in Toys R Us and other places. So yeah, it was a flop. And I consider this to be one of Sega's biggest mistake of all time. It's something that I feel they should have never made. They should have never made the Sega 32x. But let's see, is it worth for your collection? Because there are some games, so we'll get into that. So the first thing you need to know is the 32x parts. Now, if you have a Model 2 Sega Genesis, you need this adapter. The reason for that is, if you place it without the little spacer, it moves around a little bit. Not a big deal, it'll still work, but it can freeze your games if you're being very careful. So, you use the spacer, put it right here. Okay, I effed it up. Put it right here, and place the system. Just like that. Now, yes, the 32x will also work on the Model 1, but the Model 2 is the ideal use for the 32x. So here is a Model 1 Genesis. You don't need a spacer for the Model 1. Place it in, and it fits nicely. Now here's the thing you need to know. If you have a Model 2 Genesis, you would need this cable. This cable is very important. If you have a 32x, and you don't have this cable, you can't play it. This cable is very hard to find. I don't know how this happened. I don't know why the people just tossed this cable out of the trash or lost it. But this cable goes to the 32x, and normally where you put the coaxial, you put the cable in, and the coaxial goes into this slot of the 32x. Yeah. It looks like a mess. Now, if you have a Model 1, this is cable I got on the internet. Back in the day, there used to have been a tiny adapter, like this tiny. And it's for the Model 1, and it connects to this cable, so that way you can play your 32x games on the Model 1. But here, someone made a standalone cable, and they added the little port of the Model 1, so you could play the 32x easily on the Model 1 Genesis. Unfortunately for my Model 1, it doesn't really work with the 32x. I have no idea why. I just think that my Model 1 is going out the door. The big problem with the 32x, not only for its cables, is that it needed its own power adapter. So you will end up having two power adapters to plug up. And imagine you have the Sega CD, which I do. If you were to plug in the Sega CD, you'll have 3 power adapters. And all of them contain this big box. I have no idea why Sega did this. Like, I don't know what drugs was Sega on making this damn thing, or trying to figure out how to power on the 32x. It was just a mess. So let's get into the games. First off, for the 32X, it will work for Sega Genesis games, as you see right here. But there is a catch. There is one Genesis game in particular that will not work on the 32X, and that's Virtual Racing. That's because the SVP chip inside of Virtual Racing interferes with the 32X, so you can't play it. However, though, they did release Virtual Racing on the 32X, and in all seriousness, why would you play Virtual Racing on the Sega Genesis? And it also has its library of 32-bit games, which we have right here, WrestleMania Arcade game. Now, packaging-wise, it came in these plastic cardboard boxes, kind of like the Genesis games in the late 90s, as we have Doom, which this is actually a pretty decent version of Doom. It runs really well, but the problem is the music's laughably bad and half the levels are missing. Now, the reason for that is they rushed this port. They wanted it out in the holidays of 94. So I feel that it could have did so much better with the 32X version, but Sega rushed it. I also have Mortal Kombat 2 on the Sega 32X, which is basically just the Genesis version, but with better graphics and some improved sound effects. And of course, WrestleMania, the arcade game, which I have right here. The Sega 32X only has around 40 games. So yeah, the library is pretty damn piss poor. There's actually some good games on the 32X, like Tempo, Calibri, Knuckles Chaotix, Mortal Kombat 2, which I think is a great port, Doom, WrestleMania arcade game, Primal Rage. I mean, there are a couple of good games on the 32X, and of course, the game definer on the 32X, which I don't have, is Virtua Fighter. It's a great version. Same with Space Harrier and Afterburner, which Afterburner, I heard, is one of the best versions of Afterburner. So yes, the 32X flopped, and it really destroyed Sega, in my opinion, because the Sega Saturn came out in poor time, and we all knew how that turned out. So the question is the 32X worth your collection? I would only recommend the 32X under two circumstances. One, if you want improved picture. The 32X can improve picture of your Sega Genesis, and if you're using the 32X with the Sega Genesis Model 1, it will get rid of the rainbow banding, or rainbow branding, you know. It's those little lines that are in the Sega Genesis. Whenever you play a Sega Genesis game, there's like these weird, jaggy lines. So the 32X will get rid of that. And once I mentioned the improved color. The second reason, if you find it in a good price. I got mine 10 years ago for a couple of bucks, same with a few games, but it's not really something you should just buy right away. I mean, 32X has surprisingly exploded in price. For some reason, people are now buying the 32X. I don't even know, is it to play it or just to collect all the games for it because it's so easy to do it with 40 games. But there is one game in particular, a Spider-Man game that came out on the 32X in 1996. And it is very, very rare to find. It is one of the most expensive games on the Sega 32X. So that's my little review of the 32X. Do I recommend it? Little bit. If you're into Sega collecting like I am, maybe you should get it. But other than that, I think it should have never existed. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching this review. I'll see you guys on my next video. Videogamelover58 out.